Hey guys, I'm Sarah Scott and this is episode 3 of the Off the Pole podcast. This time it features the immensely talented Samantha Star. She's an international champion known for her incredible strength and balance, and when she's not travelling the world, she's teaching at the world famous Body and Pole in New York. We'll get into her training tips, diet and flexibility journey, but this interview was recorded back in July 2017, so some of the events mentioned have already occurred. Hope you enjoy. Welcome Samantha, thank you for doing my podcast.
Hi, yay, I'm excited.
All the way from New York. You're actually at home for once.
I am, I know, for 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Where have you just come back from anywhere, or are you going off somewhere soon?
I was just in Ireland for the Power to the Pole camp with Terry and Michael. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun. And I'm actually going to go be a student at Nadia's Insight Movement Camp in Seoul in Korea next month. I'm really excited.
Yes, it's rare that we get to be students, so.
I know. This is like one of the new things for me this year is that I'm trying to find more time to go to workshops, go to classes, and soak in more information.
I need to do that also. I want to do the Bali camps and things. I want to go somewhere hot as an excuse to just go learn stuff. So yeah, no, that sounds awesome. So for the people who maybe not know, I know a lot of people have been interested. These are the I normally post who I'm going to have on the podcast, and then I get an influx of questions. And a lot of people just want to know what like an average training week looks like for you, because you post a lot of videos. A lot of them are like conditioning videos and at CrossFit gyms and handstands and all that good stuff. But do you have like a split of your training? Do you structure it, or is it just freestyle?
I'm kind of a hot mess. I actually don't structure anything or have any real set goals. For me, it depends on what's going on in my life. Right now, this year, I am not competing at all because I kind of needed a break from it. So I've just kind of had more time to play and continue to do things that I find enjoyable and fun and kind of just maintain what I've gained as far as strength and skill sets go. Oh no, my cat's going to knock over this computer. Hello. I'll send her out of
to be involved. That's fine.
Yeah, I have my computer up on a stack of yoga blocks, and I'm leaning against my pole. So
that's such a pole.
Yeah. So my week, it depends. I feel like on what's going on in my week at the studio, and then I kind of, depending on how much energy I have left, will depend on how much I end up working out. Also, who's in town and what's going on and things like that. Mm-hmm. So if I generally work at Body and Pole Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, or when like my classes are. But then depending on if I pick up a shift or if a training is happening or if something like that goes on, I may end up having to be there more. I recently, it's probably been actually almost about a year. I'm the department head for cross training and flexibility there. So sometimes I have to do more admin type work or like this week, we're doing a ring thing, Power Monkey ring thing certification training for a class that we teach at the studio called Ring Thing, which is a gymnastics apparatus that is a harness waist belt that's connected to pulley systems and gymnastics rings. So it takes half your body weight, so you can learn how to do pull-ups or muscle-ups or front levers. It's a really, really fun cross-training class. So there goes my Wednesday and Thursday to do this training, which is awesome, but then I don't get to do my own personal training based on that. Mm-hmm. But I try to move and do something probably 7 days a week. My rest days tend to look more like a restorative yoga class or like a lighter handstand training. I have a hard time sitting still.
Do you have any other like specific recovery techniques that you do, or do you find that you do that through the movement that you've just said, like through the yoga and restorative yoga and things like that?
Honestly, sleep. I think sleep is so important, and a lot of people I feel like don't take the time to make time for their sleep properly. So instead of having like a rest day where I don't physically do something, I would rather get like a solid 7 or 8 hours on a regular basis. And for me, that seems to help maintain my body and give myself the time that it needs to repair.
Do you have to have like specific sleep kind of brain shutoff systems? Because I know some people like they ban themselves from their phone for a specific amount of time, or they read, or they do meditation, or they need a hot bath. Like, do you find that you can just sleep pretty well once your head hits the pillow?
I wear earplugs even when I'm home. Like everywhere I travel, I always wear earplugs when I sleep. so they like kind of one of those things where I put them in and I am one of those people that does play on their phone a little bit too long.
I think we all
But
are.
when I finally put it down, usually I can fall asleep pretty quickly because of all of the physical activity I've done throughout the day. So my body knows that it's time for some rest. But yeah, for whatever reason, earbuds seem to help kind of like zone it out a little bit more.
Yeah. Put you in your own little bubble that shuts the whole world down. I can see that.
Yeah.
And obviously you've mentioned traveling, you take those with you. You seem to be all over the world most of the time. Is there anything that you find that you need to do specifically to keep up with your health and fitness as you travel? Because it must be very difficult to keep up with the amount of conditioning that you do and to keep it at such a high level. So is there anything that you find that you really try and stick to, like make it a consistent in your life? Or is it, again, just travel mucks it up and you have to deal with it?
So yes and no. Travel definitely mucks it up a little bit because you're kind of at the whim of other people that you're staying with, locations, time that things are happening. I have, besides getting sleep, I do a morning practice, a movement morning practice every day. And it's changed throughout the years, but it's definitely something that I find keeps me at least doing something consistent. And I find that consistency is almost better than me trying to kill myself like 4 hours one day a week. I'd rather do a little bit every day. So my morning practice tends to be from like 10 to 30 minutes, depending on where I am and how much time I have and how long I might need to roll on a lacrosse ball that morning, or sometimes just breathing and sitting. If I get stuck, sometimes I'll be in a double pigeon stretch on my phone and I'm like, oh, I've been here for too long. I should probably switch sides. But yeah, I think my morning practice is probably something that helps at least keep me feeling like I kind of have an understanding of where my body is that day and how to continue. Handstands are a really good way also you can train anywhere. So if I can't find a gym to hang and do strength conditioning stuff or a pole to train pull on, you can always find ground or something random to try to handstand on.
Yeah, and you're definitely known as like the handstand queen. Many videos of yours include handstands, normally at airports and stuff like that.
Yes.
And we had a couple of requests from from my Facebook group. They were asking about, is there any tips that you can give for kind of, especially the fear from moving from a wall handstand to a freestanding handstand? I know it's very like physical and a lot of it's like you have to be somewhere.
Do cartwheels.
Cartwheels.
Cartwheels. So honestly, every time you do a handstand, you're falling. It's how you control your fall, and if you can understand where your body is going to go in space to then allow you to stay up for longer, slow your fall down, and make it look like you can do something. But a lot of it is like this brain fear. Like I think the wall can be a really amazing tool for learning and strengthening with handstands, but most people use it as a crutch with the brain fear of like, oh gosh, I can only use the wall as if I'm balancing, but some of it is really learning how to fall and playing with it. And there's so many different entrances into cartwheels. And I think people sometimes get stuck with one and then just continue to try that same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So yes, you can definitely train stuff on your own, but it's good to go and get some information from a handstand workshop or class every once in a while, if not on a regular basis. So that way you can glean a little bit more information and then practice. And then the next time you go to a class or you hear something that is the exact same thing, but you'll realize something different from it. But playing around in the middle of the room and just attempting some kick-ups and cartwheeling and understanding how the feel of the cartwheel happens and then where you can go too far in your handstand and you end up in a cartwheel and you fall out and it's safe and it's fine and you can nail your dismount. And
Definitely.
It's a lot of it really is though just, I mean, trial and error to some degree. Handstands are a lot if you watch kids learning how to walk, right? So at first they get up, they fall over. Their legs are literally not strong enough to hold them, and their brain power doesn't compute to what happens with their legs. And it's one of those things where you get up, you fall over, you try again. And during this process, you start to notice little nuances of, okay, that worked, that didn't work, right? And if you start to pay attention to those, you can start to really hone in on why didn't it work? Why does it work? And then as you're doing this, you build enough strength that you're actually able to start holding stuff.
Is it something that you feel like even though you've got a very high level of handstands? Is it something that you feel like you have to continually work at, or is it something that once you have it, it's kind of like standing but upside down?
No. That's the thing I love about handstands. There's always something more. Like you can kind of get good at one section of a skill, but then there's different nuances of even that specific skill. Having a straight body handstand is something that like I feel like I will continuously be working on because my line can always be readjusted. And also depending on who you're with, teachers, different practitioners and things like that, everybody has a different thought and variation of what they think is correct. So there's so many different nuances of things, and it's something that I think never ends, which is why it's exciting and why you can always continue practicing and having a good time. My cat right now is like just chilling.
She's like, what are you doing, Mom? I need some attention.
But hang out with me. Animals are great handstand helpers. So you do handstands near them and you try not to fall on them. It's a great learning tool. When you get better, they get real trusting and you're like, ah.
Yeah, my dogs don't do that, but they have much bigger tongues than cats. Like if you get hit with a mastiff tongue, it's really off-putting.
Yeah. He'll knock you right over, right?
Exactly.
Wow. But yeah, no, I think with handstands, it's a lot of trial and error. And then once I don't know if anybody ever actually masters it, which is why it's so cool. Like there are definitely people that are like really unfucking believable at what they can do, but there's always something else, variations or options or different things or different lengths of time that you can go for.
Sure.
So
there's a lot of parallels with pole in a sense, as long as it's a body weight exercise, there's so many variations for it. I mean, I think most of us have seen all your Instagram videos of your handstands, and you play a lot with like very active, flexible splits. Are there any kind of common mistakes that you see with pole dancers that so many people are trying to pushing for their splits and trying to get more flexible, but a lot of the time I feel like people miss that kind of functional flexibility that then you can do something with anti-gravity, we can push ourselves into a split on the floor, but how can you then translate that to a split? So is there anything that you see that common mistakes people might do?
I think the biggest common mistake, there's two in my mind. One is comparing yourself to other people, and the other is giving up because things aren't happening fast enough. Flexibility and strength, both of them, take time and patience. And a lot of times you'll be practicing and you won't even realize that you're gaining anything, and you'll get frustrated. You'll be at that plateau. And then one day you're like, oh shit, I can do this stuff that I couldn't do before. I teach flexibility classes and I practice like a lot of yoga. I'm a little bit more into like the crazier hardcore yoga that goes into some of the deeper postures, all handstands and like all crazy stuff. But it's something that my splits, honestly, like I had okay splits. I did gymnastics as a kid, and then I didn't do anything for a very long time, and then I got back into pole and trying to realize that I was like, oh, I should use this now. And it's a process, it takes time. So gravity splits, I think, are super important. Yeah, if you don't have a flat split on the floor, it's not going to magically happen in the air. But if you only train sitting in a split, you're not going to be very good at doing them in a handstand or doing them on an apparatus and getting that flat line that you want. There's a stretch that I do in my classes where you put a yoga block underneath your back when you're laying on the ground, and you try to get like your knee to your chest and your extended leg heel to the floor. Mm-hmm. And like that extension and lengthen is something that you can't get from sitting in a split. And it's something too that I think two things that made me kind of obsessed with my splits. One, I love jade splits on the pole, and my early competition years, I used to do jade to jade switches in almost every competition, and none of them were ever flat. And I would like watch the videos back and be like, no. And the same thing for my handstand. I'd pop into a handstand split and somebody would take a photo and I'd look at it and be like, oh no.
It felt flat when I did it.
Yeah. So it's something that I kind of got really obsessed with, because I was like, you know what, if I'm doing this stuff, I want to be able to do it when I want it, anytime. So I also train cold flexibility and what I would call range of motion. And it's something that has taken me, I would say 5 or 6 years to accomplish to where I am today, of doing something every day to make this achievable. I do like flex and forward and some standing split stuff every day, not to like where it hurts or where it's difficult, but like literally where my range of motion is. And on top of that, I do other flexibility and things like this. But throughout the years, my starting point range of motion has changed. And it started with maybe my split was like this. And now I can do a standing over split without trying.
So just putting your body in those positions as just a day-to-day thing rather than like a specific training session to build up to it. It's like just try and get there, try and improve it every day, little by little, it kind of accumulates.
I mean, the training sessions in between are still just as important.
For sure, yeah.
But I found, again, for me, that if I did, like, say I did 2 deep flexibilities days a week, if I didn't do anything in between, I would almost go backwards. Like my body would seize up on me. So what I found that if I can put myself through, and this is part of my morning practice, just deciding that I wanted 5 moves that I wanted to just put my body through to see where they were every day, has changed where my body can get to without making too much of an effort. And it's kind of funny because my cold range of motion flexibility is not too far off from my if I warm up for an hour of flexibility. Yes, there's definitely a difference, but it's something that I work on and I really focus in on and trying to figure out how to activate my muscles to lengthen my body. And I like to think about it as I'm not like some people are just like naturally flexible and they jump into things. I'm like, I'm fairly flexible, but I try to muscle my flexibility, which makes me feel better about it. I'm like, I can strength this and turn it into something that involves activating and using muscles and strengthening to be able to get into flexibility positions.
I think a lot of pole dancers can relate to that because we're all quite kind of doing people. I think we quite like the whole process of like achieving and the challenge and movement. So trying to incorporate that into your stretching rather than just sitting in a position on the floor, I think makes it a lot more functional for pole. So but I like the idea of trying to the cold positions, you know, just putting your body into it every day rather than having to rely on like that one stretch session a week, which most of the time isn't actually going to do enough for what we need.
Well, something else to be said about that, just so people don't try to like cram themselves into positions that they're not ready for. When I say range of motion and cold range of motion flexibility, I'm not doing it to where it feels like anything difficult is happening. It's literally just like where my body wants to go naturally and doesn't feel like anything. Yeah. So
you're not drop splitting in the kitchen while you're waiting for
Well, now I am, but that's where my range of motion. But no, it's something too that like I think sometimes, and this is me personally, like I don't think flexibility should be painful or miserable.
I agree.
I think sometimes that some people think that like they need to be so uncomfortable when they're doing flexibility training, and be in positions that don't feel good to their body because they need to achieve something that somebody else is doing. And for me, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some stretchy feels when I'm going into deeper postures and like getting myself warm and into things. But there's a difference between pain and stretchy feels. Yeah. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't rely on enough. And that's where people get injured and or don't continue their training because they don't enjoy what they're doing. So it's something that I think I love stretching. Like I think it feels good. But I'm not going to push myself into a place where it doesn't feel good. And yeah, that may take me a little bit longer to achieve end goals, but I feel like in the long run, it's going to be better for my body and I'm going to be able to do them whenever I want, as much as I want.
I think a lot of people find that pole dancers have quite a high pain threshold and sometimes will kind of train through more of what they should do really. Do you have any kind of indicators that you think, okay, so maybe I've pushed it too far or this is just natural kind of muscle tightness from my training? Like how do you gauge when it's overtraining versus just everyday pain from training?
So again, I don't think there should be pain. I think there should be soreness. I think there can be new feelings. But if I'm in pain, it defeats the entire purpose of what I'm doing. Because then I'm not going to be able to do what I love doing for the rest of the week. Like if I push myself to a place where I physically can't do anything, then I've wasted an entire week. Whereas if I had maybe done a couple less reps or taken it one notch lower, by the end of the week, if I continue doing whatever that is, then I can achieve it. But I think sometimes it happens too, and don't get me wrong, I have injured myself. I have pushed too far. And sometimes doing that is how you learn what your body can do and what your body can't do, unfortunately. If you don't listen to, and that's one of those things, everybody's listen to your body, but it's hard to understand what your body is saying if you haven't experienced something too far, which is unfortunate. But now I try to, I don't know, like listen a little bit more. I would say maybe like 3 months ago, I was doing some really deep handstand chest down past like where you should go push-ups in a handstand with a spot. And I was tired and I probably should have stopped and I didn't. And I jacked up my shoulder. I kind of went around it. And it was one of those things where I could still pull, I could still do a lot of my movements, I could still do handstands, but I couldn't hang from one arm. For me, that's miserable. So what I ended up having to do was slowly rehab myself back into that. And while I was doing this, I mean, it's something that like I could still do most of the stuff that I could do on a regular basis. I would say like 90% back to action now. There's only maybe one thing that I'm still kind of like babying a little bit.
Cautious about, yeah.
Yeah, because I know that if I push it too far and too fast too soon, that it's going to take me more time to get back to where I want it to be. And if I take it just that little bit slower, it's going to be okay. But yeah, sometimes it sucks and it's frustrating when you have an injury or something and you want to do all the things that you know you can do. But at that moment, you can't. And you have to kind of retract a little bit. And I'm not saying don't do anything. Because I think, again, for me, that's worse if I completely don't move or don't do anything. But what I can do is I can put my feet on the ground and hang with both my arms up with my feet on the ground without weight. Mm-hmm. And then so as it starts
adapting the training to suit your body and again listening to it and building it back up so you can be stronger again. Do you feel like diet has a big effect on your training as well, or do you feel, and do you change it depending on what you've got coming up? I know you had like, I think last year you were like just competing everywhere and touring everywhere, and I know you've just said you've got taking a bit more time this year for yourself. So does your diet change, or do you stay quite, you know, this is my system and this is what I like to eat?
I think it depends. It definitely changes based on seasons, I think, to some degree, where I'm traveling, what I'm doing, and how I'm feeling. I try to eat things that make me feel good. So I don't really do diets or like counting macros or whatever and all of the like, I don't do supplements. I do eat vitamins and things like that, but not like protein, like powder supplements and things. It's just never something I really understood enough to do. I haven't done the research on it enough, so that's just not something I do for me. But again, I kind of have like a boring routine of food. So I think my staples, like right now, I'm in a like not, I wouldn't say a rut, but my system right now, I eat half an avocado and a couple slices of white like like Monterey Jack cheese or something in the morning, after I drink a big glass of lemon water, and that's my breakfast. Then
you send me some wonderful avocado pictures. We have mutual avocado love. She sends me these pictures. I'll link them underneath the podcast. But she sends me these like intricately carved. Not that she's done, unless you're like a secret talent.
On the internet. That's on the internet.
Carved avocado pictures that you find on Instagram, and then she sends them to me. So you came to stay with me for 5 days, and we just lived on avocado and yeah. did pull-ups all week. It was a good time. It's finding foods that like give you energy and make you feel good. If I eat stuff that makes me feel heavy, it's harder to do the stuff that I want to do. I again change things up when I travel. So I eat a fairly regular diet when I'm here, which is like avocados. I eat. I always carry on cashews and almonds. Like in a bag. I thought you were going to say cat food then.
Oh, no, like, I don't. Not cat food. Cashews and almonds.
Cashews. Okay, cool, cashews.
There's some, I have like peanut butter packets with me most days. And that's what I eat during the day. I don't really eat meals. I just snack in between doing things. I eat little snack bar, protein bar things. So I've been on a dried mango kick lately because I need some like candy sugar. So that's like my sugar. But as odd as it sounds, I tend to not eat a lot of sugar except for ice cream.
Well, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it properly.
I feel like ice cream is probably especially in the summer when it's warm, is like a pretty staple part of my diet. But I don't eat a ton of carbs. Unless it's again like in fruit or things. I eat a lot of salmon. I do eat a lot of sushi. So I do have some carbs with sushi rice. But I tend to eat pretty minimal, and not a lot, like not big portions. Just because for me, if I'm again, like doing things nonstop all day, if I'm full, I can't press handstand because I'm too full and it feels not as great.
That's where I've been going wrong. That's why I can't press.
You gotta snack more.
Just gotta get my portions down, then I'll be able to press handstand, just like Samantha Star.
But yeah, so and like everything's gonna be different and work differently for different people, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I just know that a lot of people are just more interested in how other people do it. It's not necessarily like they're going to go off and emulate what you do.
Yeah.
They don't know your full training schedule. Everyone's body type's different. It's just, I think it's more curiousness that people like to just see how other people's bodies work.
Lemon water, a big glass of lemon water in the morning, I think is super key. Also, just because then it forces you to make sure that you actually drink some water. And then I eat a bigger-ish dinner meal usually, and then I can't train or do anything, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for bed. When I'm getting ready for competitions and things like that, I'll definitely, one of my like big exciting like carb meals that I do, I'll make a big bowl of pasta and do fried eggs and goat cheese and just like mash it all up. And usually I'll do that like maybe like once or twice a month on my like days where I really do rest a little bit more, and then immediately after I have to take a nap. But that's because it makes me feel heavier. So it's just one of those things where start to pay attention to how food makes you feel. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I eat chocolate, so it makes me happy. Like not that kind of feelings, which dark chocolate I do eat sometimes.
More energy levels rather than like the emotional feedback.
Test it. And there was actually, I went for 2 months without eating sugar just to see what it would do. I didn't eat ice cream and it was really depressing because I'm like, but ice cream.
Good for the soul. A few people have said like, you need to have a glass of red wine, or this is like my food that I like. Like everyone's got to have that thing that you can still enjoy, so it's not too regimented.
There you go. I don't drink. So there is that. So that's a lot of places that people do waste, I feel like, carbs and sugars and things like that to some degree if you're really working on like trying to balance it out. But mostly too, I stopped drinking when I started doing fitness for a living and having to invert every day. Because I just didn't.
You don't want to do that hungover, that's for sure.
It just didn't, it made my body feel different. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it was like, what would I rather? Feel like shit and have it take me a couple extra hours to pull my shit together and get my life going? Or do I want to handstand first thing in the morning? I want to handstand first thing in the morning.
I was going to put my hand up and try and guess, but I think I got it. I know that one. She wants to handstand.
But yeah, it's one of those things where if you're interested in seeing what it actually does to your body, I did do a couple years ago, I wrote like a food journal. And I literally just wrote everything that I ate, not caring what it was, like just to see what I was actually eating. Because a lot of times you don't realize what you're eating. Or what the day goes. And it was actually kind of interesting. And as I was doing it, it was actually while I was about to go into competition training. So I had like started to pare down what I was eating too. It was a lot of salmon and avocados and eggs. Salmon, avocados, eggs, and nuts, I think is like what I primarily, those are my staples.
That's good.
And yeah, so when I travel, if people ask when I stay with them what I want, I always say lemons and avocados. As my main staple.
Then you know you're good.
Then I'm good for a little bit. But one of the things too, I mean, bread and I'm sure I could find good bread in the States, but it's generally like pretty processed and not that great. So one of the reasons also that I eat fairly well when I'm home is that when I travel, I can enjoy a little bit of wherever I am's food. And I don't feel bad about it. And so when I'm in Paris, I will eat a baguette and a wheel of cheese for breakfast. And croissants. I love croissants. But again, it's something that I don't eat on a regular basis because I would like to appreciate them more when I'm traveling. So it's kind of like my treat.
I think you're allowed a treat with all the training you do. So
oh, absolutely. It's also interesting because I train less when I travel and I eat more special, like random foods. So when I get home, it always takes me about a week to get back into the right field and system sometimes.
For sure. Cool. Well, I've nearly taken up quite a lot of your time already. That went super, super quick. But do you have any like last pieces of knowledge bomb advice that you could give for the off the pole group? So thinking like strength conditioning or things that they could be doing off the pole that could strengthen their pole practice. Say they can only get to a pole once a week. What could they be doing in between that could benefit their pole?
Handstands. Handstands. Honestly, I think like body weight conditioning stuff, like especially if you don't have a gym or weights or stuff like that, like I don't really do a lot of weight stuff. It's more body weight. So if you can find a pull-up bar or a playground, hanging is so good, and playing around with shoulder activation and scap activation and lats and twisting around and monkeying. I think between like hanging, push-ups, and handstands,
you're good.
You're pretty good. Maybe as you're hanging, do some tuck knee raises and toes to bar, pike stuff. Like for me, that's my staple.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely something I think most people can find some kind of access to a pull-up bar, and at least they have a floor, they can handstand, they can push up. So.
I think honestly too, the other thing that I think is most important for me and what's worked best for me is consistency. And I don't necessarily need to do 2 or 3 hours every day, but I need to do at least 5 minutes of something every day. And by doing whatever that thing is every single day, I found I've progressed more in the long run. And yes, I'm not saying that's all you have to do. Like still have your couple times a week training sessions of doing other things as well. But if there's one thing that you're like, I really want this one skill or one build up to a skill, do it every day. Get obsessed.
Get obsessed. Nice. And if people want to follow you along and see some of these wonderful handstands for themselves, give me a little rundown of where people can find you.
So on Instagram, because that's probably my favorite platform, Lithium Kitten.
I will spell everything and link everything below. So
I don't know where she went. So people always ask, they're like, Lithium Kitten, what's that? It's my cat's name. So, yay, Lithium.
We'll Instagram it up. You've got some very good videos on Instagram.
So Instagram, and then on Facebook, I have my athlete page, which is just Samantha Star, and then my personal page, which is pretty much just the same thing, which is Samantha Star Cuomo.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on and giving us all of your advice. It's been super helpful and really good insight into, a little bit of how you train and what you eat. You're going to have to start posting these intricate avocado designs for everyone to see. So.
I'll put it. I know, right? They're so good.
Anyway.
Hey, this was fun.
Thank you for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you're enjoying the Off the Pole podcast, remember to hit subscribe to stay up to date with the upcoming episodes, and transcripts of all the episodes can be found at offthepole.co.uk.